love all you. I have two people in uh, the house tonight that I just have to pay my homage to, respect to. They're my elders, and that's my sister Sharon and my cousin Gwen, who I just met last year. Was it Gwen 2 years ago? No, I went met Gwen before, and I just met my sister in August of this year, and they are fixtures. I am so proud to have you in my life, and I could say this book is a tribute to them as well. So I'm gonna dedicate this to my family, and I got my son in the house tonight too, though he's refusing. Come say hello. Yeah. So, look at Kelly.
I know. I love you guys.
Okay. So, I just wanted to acknowledge, and I just wanted to honor them because, you know, it's been 62 years, longer than I've been alive, and I just met them. So I am so blessed. So let's get into some poetry. So I wrote this book, Cried Out Laughing, many moons ago, because of the struggles of my family, because of just the heartache and the pain that my mother, my grandmother, my great greats, and then some have been going through. And I always wondered, how can I heal? How can I do something different so that this wasn't in vain? And so I started collecting those stories, writing poems. My grandmother, Juanita Cato Stark, she used to watch me when I was a little girl, and she would tell me these stories. My mother would tell me these stories. And then because I was 3 years old, a lot of people thought that I didn't know what they were talking about. So I became a good speller and found out what they were talking about. So I decided to put it to paper. And of course, by now, and was 21, my second great grandfather was his remains were found. Joshua Halsey, a victim of the 1898 massacre. And so this book just brings those stories together and explains a lot about who I am as poety spoken. So without further ado, Cried Out Laughing. I will put it in the chat. My website is under renovation right now, but I will put it in the chat where you can email me to get the book, a copy of the book, to buy the book. I'll give you my I'll put it all in the chat for you before the night is done. So so since we're starting off, I'm going to go in kind of a little bit of an order, and I'm going to start with my grandmother, Juanita Cato Starks, because without her, we wouldn't have the stories that we did have, and we do have now. And so this is called Wise, and this is dedicated to my grandma, Juanita Cato Starks. You had all kind of remedies, Vicks Vapor Rub for my chest just so that I can breathe. Food for thought nourished through the lima beans are stories. Cracked me up the way you used to eat Wise potato chips and ice cream, and whoever had more black players meant that you were down for that team. Always held your head up so that no one could see your pain. I've seen that look in mama and knew it was only a matter of time for me. Grandma, your walk was graceful, and when you talked, your words spoke syllables of generations of oracles as you pronounced Sappho, Satira, Sally, Betsy, Juanita, and Joan, just so that I will never forget where I come from. So that one was dedicated to my grandmother. I start each chapter off with a poem for them. And so now I'm going to get into a little bit of reading on my grandmother, give you an idea of who I am still. Three traditions that I carry on from my mother's mom are storytelling, eating ice cream and wise potato chips by the stove in any kind of weather, and buying Edmund's chocolate cake for birthdays. Being the youngest girl, grandchild of Juanita Starks, I was privileged to hear her stories because she watched me when my mother went to work. Mom could barely afford to feed us, let alone daycare, and my dad was probably off on one of his 3-year hiatuses. It was during one of those times that I learned about my great grandmother, Betsy Cato, and my second great grandparents, Sally and Joshua Halsey. All I knew was New York, and I thought it was my roots. I had no concept of the Lovejoy plantation, the Wilmington massacre of 1898, the family migration up north, and the roles they played. The stories always started out with a question. Grandma, what was your mama like when you was a little girl? She would say, go get us some ice cream from Dairy Queens and some wise potato chips, and I'll tell you. It was hot as hell outside when I headed down Avenue G to my favorite store. I knew I would have to sit at the stove because although it was over 90 degrees, Grandma still got the chills. I thought it was because she was diabetic and had high blood pressure. She had all kind of remedies for her illnesses. Grandma took a chip out the bag, rubbed the salt off gently with her fingertips, blew on it and popped it in her mouth as she began her story. So if you want to know more about it, you gotta buy the book. Okay. The funniest thing, my great aunt Annie, who raised me also with grandma, she was an activist, and she was a teacher, just a philosopher, the Harlem Renaissance, and then some. And so she had wrote this essay, and I wrote this poem. It's called Long Distance, well before I even found out about her essay. But in it, she references the plaque on the Statue of Liberty, give us your tired, the poor, and the masses, right? And so she was saying this like 60, 70 years ago. And I wrote this poem called Long Distance before I even found out about the essay. So I have to believe that it's in my blood. This is called Long Distance. Liberty, you have become a contradiction. You see, your truth is now fiction, and though your words are set in stone, you never owned it. So I came to unveil and uplift. Consider this as a gift with the way this world is spinning around your axis, got people falling on their asses, and you still separate by dividends, race, and classes. Democracy is now fascist. We will hate like fashion, and with these holy wars going on, one would think the devil has more passion. So the questions that I'm asking, Liberty, why is injustice viewed as righteous? And instead of kings and queens, we're taught we'll come from slavery in 3/5. One Black man in office does not equal progress 800,000 years, and yet we're still treated like second classes. And to stand up for what we believe in, hey, Blacklist, but we don't matter. So let's take a trip across this desert sands. You see, the first modern human was Ethiopian. Yeah, check your strand. See, because we all come from one, and as one we shall stand. And if I am my brother's keeper, then who the hell is ISIS? Stand up to the faces of ignorance and pump two fists, because liberty is off in the distance, and I still see it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to be going through people, no particular order. Now, everybody wanted to know why I call my mama vintage. It's because when she first came to live with me and she was diagnosed with breast cancer at that time, at the early stage of stage 4 breast cancer, um, she started doing the things that she used to do before, when she wanted to get you to do something, or just messing around with you. And I'm like, classic, you're just vintage. And that's just the name that stuck, you know. No, she doesn't like it, but I like it. So this one is called A Vintage Tale. And then I'll read you a little story on my mama, because I have a lot of them. Okay. In fairy tales, there are storylines. There are issues and situations of every kind. Some so surreal it reveals the very things that we try to hide. So we throw up roadblocks in the form of pride and wonder why we are still there. You see, our magic wand is always pointing fingers, and rather than deal with the issues at hand, we allow them to linger on inside. But for how long until that pretending defines who we are? You see, cancer took her left breast, grandchildren laying on a prosthesis for a chest, fighting through a depression for a fate much worse than death. But she who has life has breath. Step, she says the average would lay down to die, but I am blessed, a single mother of 5, walking through the depths of hell and survived. And though at times she feels as though she has nothing left, she said, pay attention, baby girl, and watch where you step, because God never promised that there would be no pain. But if you don't stand up for what you believe in, then don't ask for change. So I stand up to the faces of ignorance and any kind of injustice, because my mother taught me how. So my walk is familiar, and some say I even look like her. So I know, mama, weary is the head that wears the crown. So I wanted to pay her the proper respect, but instead she just lifts my head and she says, I have raised a queen, and to you, baby girl, I bow. She actually did say that to me. So let's get into a little vintage. I'll give you a little background, and then I'm going to read a piece that just shows the courage of her. So, my mother, Joan Starks, and her twin, Jean, were born in Summit, New Jersey, a day apart. Jean died shortly after being born, so Mama grew up with a void in her life. She never understood being the sickest and surviving. She held on to the belief that Jean was given away at birth, and that somehow Jean and she would be reunited on the TV show Long Lost Family, or connected on such websites as 23andMe or Ancestry. One day, Mama went to visit her longtime friend, Miss Dorothy, at Methodist Hospital in downtown Brooklyn. There was a nurse there who looked just like my mama. It didn't help the fact that her name was Jean, but you know what they say, everybody has a twin. That's all Mama talked about for a while. There would be more sightings of Aunt Jean throughout the years. I often wondered that if Aunt Jean was alive today, would Mama have suffered the way she has over the years? It took a long time for Joan to love herself, despite the fact she had that long, black, wavy, good hair. She was constantly being reminded that she was dumb, she was Black, she was poor and ugly, at home as well as in school. It didn't help that she had a stigma and had to wear those thick black glasses. I mean, damn, how low can you go? Hmm. She eventually dropped out of school in the eighth grade, reading at a third grade level. Yes, she would go on to become a teenage mother twice over, having my oldest brother, Big V, in 1960, Hesketh Nate the Great in 1962, Gerald J in 1964, Eleonora or L in 1966, and then me, little E, in 1970. Typical when you think of the Black families at the time. But Mama was resilient. She taught herself how to read and write. She would go on to attend, she got her GED, and she would go on to attend Medgar Evers College, becoming a highly sought out activist and organizer of poor and working class people. Might I add, one hell of a carpenter. She could do it all. Sheet rocking, plumbing, sewing, cooking, and a great storyteller as well. Thank you. Yeah, I love that woman. She get on my nerve, and I could tell her that and survive. So, I'm gonna take it to my mother after remission because it's a funny story and I love it. So, all right. This is right after my mother had finished. She finished her chemotherapy and everything like that, and she's approaching the 5 year mark. And that came with many milestones. All right. Aunt Elaine, my mother's youngest sister, was in a horrible car accident. The tires on her car blew out on the highway. The car spun out of control, hit the guardrail, and flipped over. They didn't know whether she was going to make it. She had to be airlifted to the hospital. She was in a coma for almost 2 weeks and suffered from seizures. Aunt Elaine was a fighter and held on for a few more years yet. She had to learn to walk, talk, and needed assistance to walk. She couldn't eat, bathe herself, and needed 24-hour care. From that point on, Mama did what she had to do to get better because she wanted to be with her sisters. She got her attitude back, especially when it came down to me. She brought back the classics, like sitting at the kitchen table but calling me from my bedroom to bring her a glass of water. Mama could call my name in the middle of the night and I'd jump up and go run into her room, only for her to tell me, I love you, daughter. Now, I couldn't get enough of that, but we would tie each other. So I said, Vintage, it is time for you to get your own place. I tell mom that we will be looking for another place. Luck would have it that we all moved about the same time. Mama moved into their senior apartments downtown Vallejo. My son and I did not live far. He would go over to help her after wrestling practice and sometimes on the weekend. It didn't take long for her to settle in and regain her independence. She started cooking for herself, cleaning her house, and running her own errands. Her care provider services were discontinued. Mama was back and spunky as ever. She even decided to become a daredevil. Vintage was given an electric wheelchair and decided to take it out for a spin. She rode to my house, which was at the top of a steep hill. My concern was, how do I get her home? I said, Mom, ain't no way you going down that hill in that thing. She said, oh, Elaine, please. I came up here in my wheelchair. Now watch me go down. She shifted her electric chair on high and smiled at me and went down the biggest hill on Santa Clara Street. My dumb ass started running after her, almost losing my footing while Vintage is shouting, wee! She had both feet in the air and she was laughing. She came to a stop right in front of her building. I was all out of breath and she started laughing at me so hard tears came down her eyes. She said, "Baby girl, I survived breast cancer. This is my 5th year in remission. You think a hill is going to stop me?" Yes. The summer of 2013 were her milestones. It had been 5 years since my mama was diagnosed with breast cancer. On June 12th, 2013, she witnessed her grandson and partner in crime, Elaine Brown, graduate from high school. 2 weeks later, my mother celebrated her 70th birthday. She would see Riel turn 18 in July and start college in the fall. She said, "Y'all don't need me anymore. I want to go where I'm needed." She went to spend time to get to know her great grandchildren. Aunt Elaine wanted her sisters, and my brothers flat out said, "Take a rest, sis. You've earned it." Yeah. All right. This is called net worth. There's so much going on. I can't hold the weight. I can't even hold the weight. I'm breaking down, y'all. Yet you keep telling me to have faith, and all that God won't put more on you has become a cliche because I watched the devil have his way with success. And I wish I had the type of job that I could resign, but as a mother, I was delegated with a platform to elevate you. You see, baby, it is more than systemic. It is ignorance. When a Black boy dies from playing with a toy gun, but a white one with the real one is misunderstood. And though Nike will kneel and protest, they still got you spending your whole paycheck to just do it. Listen, baby, style has never changed the status quo unless it was stolen. And from the darkest of coal to every freckle on your face, you were chosen. In fact, there are more disenfranchised than the number who died fighting for you to have these rights. Baby, it has always been freedom versus franchise. So just like that Black Madonna, I will hold you up on high and teach you, because the fear is the uprise that one day, my Black warrior king, you will open your eyes and know what you are worth. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Unmute. Unmute. Wow. Wow. What?